It's time for the Postmortem Report with your hosts Ronald McGilray and Michael Schotter. Each month, these sultans of speculative fiction take a break from bending reality to ask one burning question. What cool stuff got buried in the social media graveyard while people were busy yelling at each other? Well, there's only one way to find out, so let's dig into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Postmortem Report. I'm your co-host, Michael Schotter.
And I'm Ronald McGilvray.
Well. Here we are at episode 3, sir. How are things going in your neck of the woods?
Well, my family has COVID.
Oh, no.
I do not have it yet, although I do sound like I may be getting it. But it finally struck us down after dodging for a couple years. So I woke up this morning and my voice is a bit hoarse, but we're professionals and we'll pull through.
I believe in us. I mean, you. Yeah, definitely you more than me. Yeah, that's definitely
But I'll apologize and upfront to anyone who's watching this if my voice goes or I have a coughing jag. But Michael will take good care of me, I'm sure, and make sure that we just scrub any kind of coughing that I do right in off in the edits.
Yeah, I will make you appear as the consummate professional everyone here knows that you are.
I bet you will. All right, let's.
So
hopefully, I'll make it through. How about you? You doing all right?
Yeah, doing good here, hanging in there. Obviously, been doing a little decorating here for the upcoming holiday. I thought it would be cool to represent here since we have this will be our last episode before All Hallows Eve.
That's it, Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there and trick or treating. I got my.
Oh, very nice.
Johnny very Gruesome.
Nice. Yeah.
This is from Gregory Lamberson's movie. Which
very
is actually,
cool.
I don't know if you can see, you can sort of see the poster. My thumb's pointing it. That's actually a Johnny Gruesome poster back there. I could do a 10-20 minute ventriloquist thing if you want.
I think we should save your voice. I think we need to save your voice.
That's probably a good plan.
But maybe we'll take a rain check on the ventriloquism bit.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a special one day.
Yeah, there's always that possibility. You never know what we're going to come up with next, people. It's chaos around here, pretty much.
That's a fine looking pumpkin you got, though.
Oh, thank you. I'm not a huge decorator, but I do like to put at least a little bit of effort in from time to time on certain holidays. But I saw something the other day that I don't think either one of us could really compete with, which will give you a little taste of our first post here, which is this insane 35-foot tall inflatable Michael Myers.
That's huge.
What do you think about that?
That's huge. That would be quite the conversation piece among my neighbors, I think.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how would you like to live in that neighborhood, right? And just see that as you roll in every night from I don't know, a couple miles away.
I would just how do you even inflate it? I guess you'd have to have one of those.
You'd have to have a compressor,
electronic
right?
ones, yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that any other way.
Blowing it up by someone all weekend, just watching them blowing it up.
Yeah, it's crazy the extent to which people will go with their decorating. I mean, just when you think you've seen the craziest thing, right? Like the million Christmas lights or whatever, then you come across something like that and realize nope, the bar's on a whole different level. I can't compete with any of that madness.
You wonder if with that, I wonder if they have all different characters that big. Can you imagine?
I imagine that has to be like a little cottage industry. That has to be a thing, right?
I mean, you have Dracula, Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember in the comics in the old days, they said you could buy, for 5 stamps you save from the comic, you could get a 5 foot tall real life Frankenstein, and then it comes in a rolled up poster. I was very disappointed.
Nice.
Made it seem like I thought I was going to get like a robot Frankenstein, but of course, when you're young and naive, so
Nice. The deceptive practices of in the back of comic ads.
yeah, yeah, ripping off kids.
Yeah, it makes me think of that one episode of The Simpsons where Bart tries to order the dinosaur because he thinks he's going to put water on it and it's going to hydrate and like eat Lisa.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
So just setting himself up for disappointment, as we all do.
yeah, what were those things? It was like those fish that added water. I can't
Oh,
think of them now.
sea monkeys.
Sea monkeys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think
never had.
everybody had those back in the day, right?
Think of all the things. Well, now you'd never get away with half this stuff because you'd be like sued left, right, and center. It was like false advertising, an
Hmm.
obvious con. So
Plus that you'd have the internet calling you out,
yeah,
with a quickness.
yeah. The first product that arrived, picture would be taken, post would be
I'd be
made.
on TikTok.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And there
nice.
was your company.
Yep, pretty much. Well, speaking of the demise of things, I hate to do it, but I think before we get into our birthdays and anniversaries this week, we've got a couple sad things to report on. And this first one was kind of a shock to me because we had just done that post in the last episode about the three actors associated with those big mafia organized crime franchises passing away. And then wouldn't you know it, I think it was like less than a week after we recorded that, Paul Sorvino died, which was pretty
It's
crazy.
yeah, that was it was a surprise. I mean, when we did the last post, you said that these things come in threes, and
I
apparently
thought we were in the clear.
you
Yeah,
were incorrect.
yeah. I
Incorrect.
stand
It's
corrected, universe. I was really
yeah,
bummed out about that one too, because he was definitely one of my all-time favorite character actors. Like I've seen him in a bunch of stuff and thought he was
yeah,
really cool. I mean, obviously, most people remember him or think of him for Goodfellas, but
yeah.
there's a bunch of stuff that he's been in that I thought he was really great in. So that was definitely a bummer to see that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you? Was it you that mentioned he was an opera singer or something? Didn't he sing opera?
Yeah, that's a I think a somewhat lesser known factoid about him is that he actually had a really good like quality operatic singing voice and used it pretty frequently to good effect. Even like late into his career and stuff, he was still out there like singing operas and stuff. So it was pretty crazy. I'd heard him sing a couple of times, obviously not live, but like pre-recorded things, and he's definitely on point. He's no slouch in that arena, that's for sure. But speaking of singers, you had one that you were going to mention, I know.
Oh, yeah, it was all over social media. Olivia Newton-John passed away. That was a shocker. I mean, it was like Grease was such a major movie and soundtrack back in my youth that
Hmm.
it's funny because I never really thought much about her over the years because there's only a few films that really she was in, but it was such an impact that when I heard the news, it kind of like stopped me in my tracks, kind of thing.
Hmm.
It was yeah, it was it was just one sad news after another. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, every every boy back then too was
Oh, it
totally
was crushing. Yeah.
in love with her. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know that was a huge thing. Well, and especially when like yeah, just whenever she hit music video, right, and people got
yeah,
exposed to her through that, I think that really changed things up quite a bit for a bunch of youngsters.
yeah.
But yeah, so that was definitely a little
Sad
bit sad and
news.
a little bit of a bummer. But I thought it would be good to front load that a little bit because I know we ended this segment with the passings last time, and it was kind of like ending on a bit of a downer, right? And so we
Yeah,
had to kind of bounce back from that. So I figured this is a good way to transition out of that and into some birthdays and anniversaries. So why don't you dig some of those up for us?
sure. Well, for any of you out there that missed some of these birthdays, here's our birthday file. August 4th, Kealan Patrick Burke. It was his birthday. Um, Actually, I have a book. I'll show you.
Oh, props. Nice.
Yeah. Of course, he has his books, Kin and Sour Candy. I have actually a signed edition of, can you see that? Currency
Mm-hmm.
of Souls.
Very nice.
Signed.
Mm-hmm.
You're envious, aren't you?
Yes. Yes. The jack-o'-lantern is hiding my jealousy, but
Yeah,
it's there. It's
yeah,
palpable. Yeah.
yeah. So it's his birthday. It's also on August 6th. Austrian Spencer, the author of the Sadist.
Very
Um,
nice.
yeah, he is actually. I read the book. It's something else. It's just very creative guy, and he's
Mhm.
always given up props to everybody else too. He's very supportive and stuff.
Yeah, that
So
was
happy
actually
birthday!
really cool thing that I saw him do. He was actually kind of giving some shout outs around his birthday to some other people like Dan Soul, who was an author that I hadn't personally heard of, but I guess has been around for a while. Uh, in his book, The Ash, which I actually read the synopsis for as a result of seeing that post and thought it
Yeah,
sounded pretty cool. So
it
I'd like
does
to,
sound cool.
yeah,
It's kind of that sort of post-apocalyptic, or actually, it's not even post. It's like happening apparently, right?
yeah, it
Right
is.
when it's
It is
going.
now apocalyptic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they kind of make it seem like it's like a nuclear war, but it's not from
Yeah,
where
it
you
seems
thought it
like
would be
that's
from.
sort of a false premise that
Yeah,
he's setting up, kind of leading you to believe that something's going on, and then it kind of goes in a different direction, apparently. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm guessing it's probably like maybe aliens nuked us,
Hmm.
not another country or something.
Hmm.
But I don't
Many
know. You'll have to read the
possibilities.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
always like that when people do that sort of thing. I always think that's a classy move, right? Because here you have somebody who's it's their own thing that they have to talk about, but then they use that as an opportunity to promote something that somebody else has got going on. I always think it's a respectable play.
Another birthday, August 9th, was Candace Nola's birthday, author of Bishop, and actually her collection, the Baker's Dozen, just won the Splatterpunk award. So
Oh,
happy birthday and congratulations
yes, very
to
nice.
Candace. Um, Katherine Silva, her birthday, August 22nd, writer. Um, she has a new book, Orchards, out right now, and also The Wild Dark, which I think was a book before Orchards.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think isn't Orchards like a story set in that same universe or in that
I think
same
so.
world established in
Yeah,
that previous book? Because I think Orchards is, if I'm not mistaken, a shorter work, uh, like a novella or a novelette or something like that.
I'm not
But I'm
sure,
not
Brian.
100% sure on that.
So if you haven't given Catherine her birthday shout out, get on it. And Mark Towse, his birthday, August 29th. Um, his book, Gone to the Dogs, is available right now. They're also doing through NFT books through D&T Publishing.
Hmm.
So congratulations to Mark on that and to D&T, and happy birthday to everyone we mentioned. Hope you had a great day.
Excellent. Well, as is our custom at this point, I think it's time to share a very important message with everyone.
Great idea.
Frankie and Johnny Furniture is having a sale. Right now, you can buy 3 complete rooms of furniture for only $699 with only $250 down. Just $50 down on select items will put you in a great bedroom set or living room set today with no problem. All senior citizens get a 10% discount. Bad credit or no credit, no problem. Are you on welfare or Social Security? Are you newlyweds? No problem. Come see us.
I say, this is Frankie and Johnny's, the place that lets you have it with no problem. I'd like to buy a bedroom set.
Do you have any credit?
No, I receive Social Security and welfare.
You have to see the special man.
Let her have it. With no problem.
I like to buy a living room set.
Do you have any credit?
No, I filed bankruptcy.
You have to see the special man.
Let her have it. With no problem.
I say, see Frankie and Johnny, he's the credit man in town. For only $50 down, he can put you in a living room set, a bedroom set today. See the special man.
I got the $50.
Let her have it. With no problem.
I got it with no problem.
So, after a long day of furniture shopping, I think you can work up quite an appetite. And I know you read a book recently that has a bit of a food theme to it.
Yeah, Soup by Kate DeJonge. It's something else. It's not the kind of soup that you'd actually want to try. Kate did a really good job. It's a novella. I don't want to give too much away because it's a sort of a shorter work, but it's a woman who works in a mortuary and is proposed a financial deal that would be beneficial to her to use things around the office to make some good soup. So it was.
I'm not going to lie. When I first heard about this book and I heard that you were reading it, my very first thought was, the soup has people in it, doesn't it? You don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that. It's fine. But I was just like, this is the time of year, right? This is probably what's on his mind. He's probably looking for something a little like out there and a little freaky to read. Yeah. So you would give this one a thumbs up?
Yeah, definitely. It was a quick read. You get caught up in the character and not just sort of the cool idea behind it, and sort of the grossness of some of it. There's sort of the thriller thing, the sort of, I can't think of the word, the not animosity, but the push and pull between these two other characters concerning this little business venture. So it's
because from what I gathered from the synopsis, she's sort of not necessarily a willing participant in this whole thing, right? She's sort of being coerced into it to a degree. Yeah.
Without saying too much, it's
sure. Yeah, definitely don't want to give too much away there, but I think that was something that was sort of hinted at in the sort of back of the book text, so I think we're fairly safe with that.
Yeah, but Kate did a great job, so congratulations to her, and grab yourselves a bowl of soup, everyone.
Nice. Yeah. Well, in kind of keeping with the sort of spooky, creepy, bloody, gory kind of theme of the month, of the day, I actually read a couple of things recently that I think are probably worth mentioning. So up first, we have Boondock Butcher by Mr. Chuck Buda. And what this is a sort of splatterpunk meets 80s horror meets 90s psychological or supernatural thriller, kind of all mashed up together. And I won't go into too much detail about it because I've reviewed it pretty much everywhere. So if you go look for it in various places. You'll probably spot my review for it if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details of sort of my take on it. But I think just in general, it's a book I'd recommend, particularly to anybody who's a fan of splatterpunk, and who's a fan of sort of more over the top, sort of zealous portrayals of like gore and blood and guts and that sort of thing in their horror. I think there's a lot there for people to grab onto in that vein. Pun intended.
I thought you were going to say, I was, after reading it, I encourage anyone to read this. Anyone who thinks of passing through Tennessee, I suggest they read this book.
It's basically like a visitor's guide.
Yeah. Don't break down in Tennessee.
Yeah.
There you go.
Things not to do in Tennessee. Break down in the middle of the night. Stay on the main roads. That's pretty much the takeaway.
Don't look for help.
Nice. So we'll give Chuck another little shout out here, because the other book that I recently read that I think sort of fits this sort of Halloween spooky motif a little bit is a book that he co-wrote with Armand Rosamilia, called In the Marrow, which is a sort of weird supernatural Western. And this one is, as you might expect, kind of sets up as a sort of traditional lawman chasing down a criminal gang on the run, and then very quickly sort of offshoots into some paranormal, supernatural stuff, which I will not spoil, that I think fans of that sort of thing will definitely enjoy. It's definitely another book that I would recommend. Not necessarily for everyone, but I think if you enjoy that sort of thing, there's a lot to like in what's going on there.
I'm not actually familiar with that one. It's a Western, right? A Western supernatural kind of thing.
Yep.
Is it a big book or is it a novella type?
It's definitely novel length, but not too far over that 40,000 word cut. I imagine it probably comes in somewhere around 50,000 would be my guess, just based on the page count. It was a quick read. I blew through it probably in about 2 or 3 days, just hitting it up, every so often throughout the course of a couple of days. And I will say too, definitely one of the stronger starts to a book that I've read in a while. Like the opening of that book is a real page turner for sure. And then, depending on your personal preferences or your personal tastes, you may or may not enjoy where things go from there. But I definitely came away from it, with a thumbs up. And I think, like I said, people who are into those sorts of things, like into the supernatural, weird Western stuff, I will probably find a lot to like there. I would say.
I wonder how they did it. I wonder if they did like one chapter each, or if they just kind of worked together.
Yeah. I mean, being somewhat familiar with each of their individual writing styles from reading, previous stuff that they've written, I would imagine that they were probably trading chapters, because that's kind of the feel of it, or at the very least trading scenes, maybe within chapters. But there were definitely a few moments there that I kind of felt like each of their individual voices were kind of taking center stage more than the other. And that is definitely an interesting thing when you have those sorts of collaborations, because those transition points can be really key, right, as the torch kind of gets passed back and forth. But I'd say one thing about that book that definitely works really well is you don't really notice those seams, right? Like, even as they're switching roles or switching off between each other, it feels pretty solid and pretty seamless. So I think, in fact, I would even go so far as to say that if you didn't know that book was written by two different people, you probably wouldn't notice it, I don't think. So yeah,
that's all right. I'll have to check that one out. What was it? It was called what? In the Marrow.
In the Marrow. Yep.
The Marrow.
With a cover by Chad Lutzke. If you're familiar with him at all and his stuff, he does a lot of cool covers. So throw that one out there too. Another little factoid I happen to know about that one.
I'll have to take a look after the show.
Nice.
I'm just going to take a sip and try to cool down that throat that's burning.
Yeah, I mean, do what you got to do. Drown that COVID, whatever it takes, right?
Well, that's all you have to do, right? It's just drink water, and COVID's gone.
Oh, is that how that works? I think that's the
public
Canadian
service
COVID.
announcement.
I don't think we can do that here.
From the makers of the best internet in the world comes COVID in a glass. One sip and it's gone.
Now with maple
just
syrup
like your
flavoring.
internet connection. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop before I get myself in trouble, before I get all the crazy Canadian viewers riled up and angry with me.
There you go, throwing snowballs at you.
Yeah, yellow ones.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how to transition out of that one, but let's go for it. So we were just talking about some books. I thought another thing we could talk about here today would be some places where you can find books. And I think you might have something.
That's a great segue.
Chime in there.
Yeah. Well, it's Little Ghosts Bookstore is a new horror themed bookstore that's opened in Toronto. I've seen some posts. They're posting pretty regularly now, and they're supporting a lot of indie authors.
That's always nice.
Yeah, if I wasn't so chicken about catching COVID, I'd be in Toronto, because I used to love visiting Toronto, but we kind of stay huddled. But now apparently it's caught up to me anyway, so I might as well go to Toronto. But yeah, one thing I definitely want to do is I'd check out the bookstore. But they seem to have a great selection, and they're always doing posts, and they're really pushing the indie horror writers. So kudos to them. But yeah, we should get one in Ottawa, but of course it's in Toronto because all the cool things are in Toronto.
Yeah, is that where all the cool kids hang out?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. The ones with money, because you got to be like rich to live there now.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Like
well, we have some cool themed bookstores here in the U.S. too. Like a couple that spring to mind are like Raven Bookshop down in Kansas City. They do some cool horror themed stuff with indie authors and that sort of thing. And then one that I've recently become aware of that I think is pretty cool that I'd like to visit someday is Space Cowboy Books out in California, which is basically, as you might imagine, a science fiction themed shop. And I know both of them do a lot of indie stuff similarly. I thought it was interesting, though, because we were talking about this a little bit before the show, and you had mentioned that there's really not a ton of indie shops up there, at least as far as you're aware of. And I think that's a real shame, because we have the big chains down here for sure, and they definitely muscle a lot of people out. But I feel like we do still have a pretty thriving indie bookstore community here in the U.S. Despite the past couple of years and all that.
In Toronto or Montreal, you'd probably find more. But yeah, we used to have one. If you're a mystery buff, called Prime Crime, that was downtown in Ottawa. And I always thought, as I got into my later years, when I was getting ready to retire, I would go and like work there. And that's what I go, just work at this bookstore with all these like books, and but
surrounded by your people.
It closed, exactly. And I don't know what I mean, to have to compete with the stores who can sell for less and get better deals. But,
yeah, it's hard to compete with scale, that's for sure, right? When a place can order in bulk and fixed prices based off of that, then how do you really compete with that? But that's where I think community really comes into it, right? It's all about having those reading clubs and events and signings and things like that give you that differentiating factor, right? And that's another thing I think the indie bookstores have as an advantage is their willingness to work with authors and, small presses and that sort of thing to have special events and stuff, the sorts of things that a bigger chain wouldn't necessarily be bothered with in a lot of cases. And I think taking advantage of those opportunities is how a lot of the indies have been able to succeed, if not thrive, in the current landscape of things.
Yeah. Well, I guess you'd have to be in a location too that had a sizable population.
And good traffic.
Yeah. Someone with whatever theme you're using, that they have a lot of fans of that there.
Yeah, because I feel like the themed stores, they have a bit of a draw, right? Because if you hear about a good themed store, I think people are willing to travel a certain distance if they know, oh, this is the sci-fi spot, or this is the horror spot, right? Or this is the romance spot, or whatever the genre is. And I think that can definitely be another differentiating factor, to separate you from a all-encompassing sort of general purpose shop.
Yeah, it's
a risk, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, because the big draw is, as you said, have them writers come in. They do signings, meet them in person. But to get signed books now with social media, I mean, you can just direct message them. I'd like a signed book, please, and they can take care of it for you personally.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do well.
Yeah. It's always, I think, about taking advantage of the unique circumstance, right? Because having the author physically there, if you can have him do a reading or something like that, right? Or just the opportunity to meet the person in the flesh, right? It can be a draw, for a lot of people, maybe get a picture with them or something like that. I think you definitely have to play up those aspects of things, like whatever the things are that are unique to that experience. Because like you say, with things changing constantly and things that used to be difficult now becoming easy, you gotta keep looking for those new angles and those new ways to approach stuff. But I don't envy indie book shop owners at this point in time trying to figure all that stuff out. But there seem to be people still making it work, so that's encouraging.
I think you'd have, if you're in an area too which had a lot of writers, like actually creatives, that helps too, because I see on social media and stuff where certain people's certain neck of the woods is there's so many writers there. Top of my head, I can't think of what it is, name a city, but I was just there. Oh yeah, I'm from there. And I was like, wow, there must be something in the water. They're sure pumping out a lot of horror writers there.
It's the lead.
Yeah. So that's good to draw from too. But
nice. So there were a couple of more places that you had mentioned that I thought were pretty interesting that were worth bringing up, where you can find some stuff about books. You want to hit us up with those?
Sure. There was, other than bookstores, when you're looking, cruising through Amazon or anywhere trying to find books, there's a couple of social media things that I go to steal ideas and find ideas. One of them is the Nerdy Narrative, Leslie Smith's. The COVID's kicking in. Her podcast. She talks about horror, but there's a lot of sort of fantasy in hers, and it's sort of it's got me thinking a lot, because some of the books that she reads, I was like, oh, I like to read them, but there are a lot of fantasy books are series, and I don't really get into the series much anymore after the whole Game of Thrones debacle, where I waited and waited for it. I was just like, unless it's a finished one. But I read so many standalones that get into a series is kind of tough. but there's so many good ones. So when I'm watching Leslie on the Nerdy Narrative, it's just if you're looking for some interesting books, you should check out her site.
Yeah. Fun fact about her that I just discovered just the other day. She is actually a judge in this year's self-published science fiction competition. So yet another reason to check her out.
There you go. Yeah, she reads pretty varied. I mean, some of the books I've never even heard of some of them, and they sound so good. So if you're looking for new ideas or something, it's definitely something to check out. And you can. She does monthly and weekly wrap ups of the books too, and shows her book hauls. Be nice just to read so many books. I barely seem to be able to get through a book a month these days. But what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, my reading tends to be fairly spurty these days also. Like I find that I almost have to set time aside for it at this point, where I'll just say, okay, this is the week I'm going to read a book or two, right? And then set aside a couple hours a night, just for that week to kind of bang a few out. That's kind of how I've been doing it lately. I find I just don't really have the opportunity for spontaneous reading like I used to, because I just have so many other things going on these days.
Yeah, it's tough, especially when you're writing. It's kind of, but before you go to bed, try to read. But then, if you're only getting like 2 pages and then falling asleep, it's not really a great time to read. But
and I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but I know personally I don't like to do a lot of reading while I'm actively writing like a first draft, because I always worry about like that spilling into my brain. I kind of like to keep that a little bit compartmentalized. Now if I'm doing a lot of editing or marketing or promoting or like all the million other things that you have to do, publishing, that I'm not so worried about. But for those initial drafts especially, I kind of like to keep my head clear.
I just don't do as much reading as I'd like to do, because I loved reading when I was younger. Well, that's a lot of decades. Could be younger from like a year ago, but I used to read a lot. But I just time catches up, and family things. But that's one thing I really want to do. And when I watch stuff like the Nerdy Narrative, I'm like, I really got to pick up my reading game. So yeah, I like to watch her show. Gives me ideas, and I just write them down and go, hopefully I'll check this book out one day. So if you're looking for book ideas, check out the Nerdy Narrative.
Nice.
And give it a thumbs up. But switching from books, if you like films, specifically found footage films, then Angel from Voices from the Mausoleum, she touches on a lot of different things. She has like favorite films, different picks. She has a lot of guest hosts. It's just, I was trying to think of a word, and they're just all slipping today. But it's like bits and bites, something different in every handful.
Nice.
Do you have bits and bites in the States?
I think I've heard of that, but I don't think it's super popular around here.
I don't think it's popular here.
Yeah.
But the found footage Fridays she has, I've been watching, because I was never a huge fan of it. When I first saw Blair Witch Project, I didn't even like it. I thought it was kind of ridiculous. And then I think it was because I was expecting something more, because I guess the hype was so horrifying. I was like, this is people running in the woods. I was like, whatever.
Buy a steady cam.
Yeah. So I watched it years later, just on my own. I wasn't with like friends or anything. And as I was kind of like not studying it, but I was kind of like seeing what they did and sort of how they built up the tension, I started to enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to really sort of get into the whole found footage thing. Then, of course, the paranormal investigative movies came out with the home cameras and everything, and now there's tons of them. But they're all really interesting.
So one of the things that definitely reminds me of is the experience of watching films like that in a group setting or in a theater setting versus sitting and watching it by yourself, right? Because so my kind of story about that is I remember very distinctly buying and watching The Ring for the first time in a room full of people who were just goofing on it and laughing at it, and just completely not invested in what was happening on the screen at all. And it completely changed the dynamic of what the experience of watching that film was like. Because then, if you go back and watch it in solitude, sitting in the dark in total silence, it has a completely different impact, right? And I think Blair Witch is another good example of that, right? Like the experience of going and seeing that in the theater when the hype was exploding about it and people are like freaking out and kicking the chair behind you and all that sort of thing, versus just sitting and watching it by yourself is a totally different thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it got a second life with me. I went from something where I was dumping on it to, now there's some reverence there. It's like, they put together an interesting concept, and it built a whole cottage industry, because there sure are a lot of them now. But if you're looking for ideas for found footage, check out Angel, Voices from the Mausoleum.
Nice. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I've seen her shout out some books and stuff too, in addition to films. Like I know films are primarily what she focuses on, but I swear I've seen her shout out a few books and stuff on Twitter. So I think there might be some crossover there too, here and there.
Yeah. She's she's supportive. She, as I said, her video and YouTube channel hits on almost everything, plus her social media
nice
presence.
Well, speaking of social media stuff, I wanted to shout out and mention the fact that I just joined a new book recommendation and sort of reading recommendation site called Book Binge, which is, or I'm sorry, I said that backwards. BingeBooks, which is basically a site that was created by a bunch of authors and a bunch of folks from the small and indie publishing world to sort of provide an alternative to something like a Goodreads or a BookBub or an all author. There's a lot of those type of sites out there, but this one kind of caught my eye with the presentation of it and some of the things that they're doing. Like they have some cool series and features, like an author's discussion room, and like a book club series where they have featured authors come in and do interviews and that sort of thing. Like they just had Dean Koontz on there the past couple of weeks, which is kind of a big win for them in terms of drawing a lot of attention to the site. But one thing that's kind of interesting about it is if you want to be on there as an author, there's actually a little bit of an application process. It's nothing too severe, but it does kind of, prevent people from just kind of going on and slapping stuff up there, which I kind of appreciate. And one thing they do, which is actually kind of nice, is unlike a lot of other sites of that sort, when you go to do the application as an author, they will actually go in and set up your book pages for you. So, if you have several releases under your belt and you are wanting to get onto the site, they actually make it pretty easy, because they give you like a 20 or so question form to fill out as an author, and then they actually do all the setup of your stuff for you. And then of course you can go in and tweak it once you're approved and once you're in there and have access to everything. But it was just a nicety that I appreciated, and I think that was smart on their part. Realizing that there's so many of these sites out there already, and as a sort of incentive to try to attract authors to it, offering that sort of service, for lack of a better term, I think was kind of cool of them. So I definitely wanted to give them a shout out.
So readers can go on and like find authors on it.
Yeah, I mean that's really the emphasis of the site, right? It's geared toward readers. I mean, obviously authors are on there and they're putting their information and their posts and stuff like that up there to give people stuff to look at. But the site is really geared toward readers. It's all about book discovery and recommendations and all that sort of thing. So it's again, like I say, sort of like a new take on sort of the Goodreads methodology.
So people, there's a whole review section kind of thing where people do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Reviews, recommendations, you can follow people. And then of course, it does all the typical social media things, right? Where like when people follow other people, that kind of creates a little like network or web of recommendations that sort of feeds and propagates out and lets people know like who you're following and who's following you and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of how they drive the discovery for people. And then of course they also have recommendations by genre and things of that sort. So if you are particularly into horror or sci-fi or whatever, you can pull up that genre page and get a bunch of stuff that's focused on whatever you're particularly interested in.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth a look. And I think it's a funny thing. It's an interesting thing to me because you have sites like that coming up and kind of sort of trying to eat Goodreads lunch, for lack of a better term, right? But then I think the nice thing about that is it incentivizes the places that have been around for a while, like Goodreads, to kind of reevaluate what they're doing and step up their game, right? Because just in these past few days before we're recording this, Goodreads started rolling out their new book pages with some like enhancements and updates and refinements that I actually think look really good as well. And it kind of made me wonder, like, was there incentive in doing that? Some of these other sites that are kind of on the come up, that are maybe drawing some people away from them. So I think, as with many other things, competition is good and healthy, right? So I think it's just a win for everybody involved, really.
So you're up there now, right? So I can look you up now. Okay.
Yep. Got my profile approved a week or so ago. Everything's all dialed in and prettied up. The podcast is listed there. They actually have a podcasts section. So if you're an author with a podcast, you can list it up there, which is pretty cool. So you can find us there. Although you really don't need to do that because, well, you're here. But
exactly, yeah.
You can, if you send other people to there, they could find us.
Check it out. There you go.
Yeah, nice. So speaking of good ideas, let's talk about some video games.
That sounds like a great idea.
So we've all been there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe not as extreme.
Yeah. Maybe not quite
professional
that extreme.
Gamers. Yeah.
Okay, so truth or dare, video game, truth or dare. Have you ever broken a controller or any piece of equipment?
I have not.
Yes, neither have I. I'm proud to say. I'm actually very proud to say I've never let anything get that far under my skin.
Yeah.
definitely had a few like strangling the controller moments, kind of almost on the verge of twisting it a little bit, but yeah, yeah.
I think
Happy
I've
to.
verbally dressed down a game. I told that game what I thought,
Yeah,
but I've never physically thrown my controller through a TV screen or anything like that.
that's really good. I'm glad to hear that because I'm definitely not a huge fan of the gamer freak out, to be honest, as a thing, especially because, especially in the era of YouTube, so many of those are fake and staged
Yeah.
anyway, and I think it just perpetuates this really negative kind of detrimental stereotype about people who are game enthusiasts, which I think is really not all that positive or healthy. That being said, some of those are pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's all circumstantial for sure.
Yeah. Well, some of them
But
are cruel too, because of those ones where the parents are going
mhm,
to destroy their kids' things, and the
mhm.
kids are like wigging out, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
a parent are you? I was like, but
yeah. Well, and then you have the parents who are doing that stuff for the clicks, right? They're running the
yeah,
YouTube channel, right? So they want to film their kid freaking out so they can put it on YouTube and basically exploit that. Pretty gross.
yeah, sad world.
Yeah.
They aren't real gamers.
No, no,
They're
definitely not.
faux gamers.
That's right. Uh, so speaking of games that can make you freak out, I'll tell you one of my favorite gamer freak out stories
Sure.
from my own experience. After you tell the people about the game you want to talk about this time.
Well, my game this episode is Grand Theft Auto.
Very nice.
Yeah. Did you
Any
play?
particular version of Grand Theft Auto, or just the series in
I
general?
I like this the series in general, but for me, the heart of it, my everything is San Andreas.
Nice.
That was my favorite. It's like nothing's ever come close to it. I don't know what it was about it. It was just totally captivated me. I was,
Hmm.
I just, it the setting too, like the sort of the streets, like California, where you're going was it's so foreign to what it's like in Canada, kind of thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
no palm trees here, so it's so
Hmm.
different. And you know, having your character, running through streets, and he could run or blocks and blocks. You can investigate whatever, or steal a car, steal a bike, take a motorcycle.
Go into
It
the
was,
woods and hunt Sasquatch.
yeah, it was just.
Yeah.
I mean, the later ones. I mean, graphically, sure, they got better and stuff, but it was like, yeah, nothing ever touched me the same way as San Andreas. It was just like literally the coolest game I'd ever seen.
When they really did blow the doors off in terms of functionality and kind of what they let you do, right? Because I mean that was the one where you could literally gain weight, right? Like
Yeah,
if you had your character go to the drive-through all the time and just eat nothing but burgers or whatever, you could gain a couple 100 pounds, and God'd be all winded running around and stuff. That like little details and things like that. I think were just where you could really tell like they were at the top of their game in terms of what they were doing with that engine and that technology they were using to make that stuff, to the point where
yeah.
they could get into those little esoteric details like that.
It's there's so much of it I forget. It's it was such a complex game. It was because
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking now if it was that version where you had to go to the gym
Mm-hmm.
and you had to go to the gym and work out, because if you didn't work out, then you'd like slow down and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Yeah, that was all
so
part
you'd go
of
to
that
gym,
dynamic. Yeah.
do the boxing or whatever. It was
Mm-hmm.
it's
I
yeah.
actually had not. had much opportunity to spend a lot of time with San Andreas. The one that kind of caught me was the one right before that, which was Vice City,
Okay.
which kind of captivated me because of the whole South Florida, Miami Vice 80s aesthetic that it had.
Okay.
And I really was pretty into that one and had a great time with it until I got to that damn helicopter mission. There's a sort of a notorious, infamous mission in Vice City, which I'm sure everybody who's played that game knows about, where you have to
Yeah.
basically fly a radio controlled helicopter that's got a bomb on it into a building. And the controls are just clunky and janky as hell. And I just remember failing that thing like over and over and over again to the point where I was gonna stab something. I was like right on the verge of stabbing something before I finally got it. I was on like the umpteenth millionth try. But it's funny because I didn't even think about that being my biggest sort of freak out moment with GTA, because the one that really got me, the one that really destroyed my will to exist, was that last mission at the end of Grand Theft Auto 4, where you're on the jet ski and it's like a timed mission where you've got to get from point A to point B in a certain amount of time, and you're like racing along the shoreline on the jet ski, and everything in the universe is trying to destroy your will to exist. And that was another one that I just kept doing over and over and over again until I almost went insane before I finally got it done. But yeah, GTA has a couple of those like soul crushingly difficult missions in it scattered throughout the games. But it's funny because a lot of those missions that are so difficult, they kind of run in stark contrast to like the open-ended, do whatever you want to do sort of mentality of the rest of the game experience. And I always find that dichotomy really interesting, right? Because here you have this game that's basically this humongous sandbox where you can basically just do whatever, and then you have these highly structured things that you have to do at certain points to progress the story or whatever. And I always find the push-pull between those two things really interesting.
So the side missions. I remember doing the casino, going in trying to win money at the casino. It was it was so cutting edge. I don't know how many hours I put into that.
That was one of the things about it that was so great about all of the versions of those games. That's so great is just the discovery of everything, right? It's like what's around this next corner, or what's up these stairs, or what's behind this door, and just kind of the joy of getting to discover all that stuff for the first time was a lot of the magic of that stuff. Yeah, for me, I've never really been super into Rockstar's narratives in terms of their storytelling. I think, like, honestly, like a lot of the GTA storylines kind of fall flat for me from a narrative standpoint. But in terms of like technology and gameplay and sort of world building and all that sort of stuff, like they definitely are working on a pretty high level there, like across the board for sure, as far as I'm concerned.
Did you ever play any of the online stuff? Or
yeah, GTA 5 online I played quite a bit of with my buddies. Got on there and ran amok. That was definitely a fun experience, but it's also very much its own thing. Like it's not really like a one-to-one, in terms of what you'd experience in single player, but it was a fun diversion for a while. Then of course you had all the hackers and stuff, figuring out how to hack the game and run around just firing rocket launchers like they're mini guns and whatnot. That kind of put a damper on things for a while, but they kind of made that into like a platform unto itself, where they kept like adding new content and new missions and new areas and mechanics and stuff to that. And I think they're still adding stuff to it even to this day, which is kind of crazy. I haven't really engaged with that in a while, but one of the other things that I think is crazy interesting about GTA is how role-playing community has really embraced it as like a platform for doing things, and especially since like GTA Online came out and that became an easier thing to do. Like all of the role-playing communities that have sprung up around that game is really amazing in terms of like keeping it alive and in like the public eye, for as long as it's been.
Yeah. It's, they do that Red Dead Redemption 2 Rockstar game, so I guess they juggle it all. I hated the cars. I was never good at driving the cars. In the normal game, I wasn't bad, but on the online stuff, when they did, the races, stuff like that, I was like, I don't know. I'm just a terrible racer, apparently, online.
Yeah, as like a racing game aficionado, one thing I'll say about GTA is like the handling of the cars is never up to snuff for what you'd expect from like a good racing game, right? It's no Forza, right, or Gran Turismo or whatever. And so like the online racing stuff never really held my interest for very long because I just inevitably end up getting frustrated with it. Like I think the way the car physics work in those games is great when you're trying to like recreate an episode of Starsky and Hutch in your mind. But like for actually like serious competitive driving, it's not necessarily the best.
Yeah, I didn't find those fun at all. I mean, if you're just driving crazy and then you crash, well, you can just jump out and grab the next car over. But when you had the competition where you had like 2 minutes to do this circuit, and then you'd go and you'd just like be a second off. It's like, oh, you lost. Try again. I'm like, it just a few times I could have come close to throwing a controller.
Yeah.
With that, because they're annoying. But GTA, it was fun. I had a lot of good years and memories with that.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing what they do with 6 when that inevitably comes out, because that'll be another watershed moment for gaming, I'm sure. Fun fact about GTA too, it's been kind of pretty well documented that crime rates in the real world actually significantly drop in a lot of areas after a new Grand Theft Auto game comes out. Do with that information what you will.
Yeah,
So I did want to mention another game while we're on the subject, which is something that I've been playing recently, called Raft. Have you heard of this one?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, so this is in the sort of sandbox survival vein, akin to things like, I don't know, like a DayZ or a Cryofall or something along those lines. Where basically you have to just survive in a hostile environment. And in this particular game's case, the hostile environment is you're stuck on a little like 5x5 raft floating in the middle of the ocean. And all you really start the game with is basically like a little apparatus, a little like hook with a rope attached to it. You have to throw out into the water and kind of grab stuff out of this debris field that you're floating through, so that you can get pieces of material to make tools and structures and things to expand the raft out with. And so you basically start out on this tiny little square, and after you play for a few hours, assuming that you survive, you kind of end up on your own little like homemade version of the Titanic, or like the escape raft from Gilligan's Island or something like that. And that's a fun one too, because you can play it with friends. You can get a little group together and try to survive and go explore the ocean and these various islands that you come across, and sea creatures and other little surprises that I won't spoil. But yeah, it's a cool little game. Started out as a classroom project, I believe, at one of those places, one of those game development institutes, where people kind of go to learn gamecraft, and basically took off from there, and had like a long run on early access on Steam, and then recently came out of early access earlier this year It's sort of like its full 1.0 version. And so it's been kind of cool to see the evolution of that from basically like a student project to like a full-fledged game over the past few years.
Yeah. Well, you'd mentioned that you could play with friends. So if you were playing with friends, are you all on the same raft, or
Yeah,
do each have their own raft?
Yeah, so the host has their raft, and then other people, when they join in on the host, they just sort of appear, on the raft and become part of the crew, basically. And so you kind of work together to fish, or go onto the islands and harvest materials, or work on the raft, or deal with whatever's trying to destroy the raft, which I won't again spoil. But yeah, it's pretty cool, like cooperative, collaborative sort of thing. Like if you're into playing games with other people cooperatively, there's a lot of mileage you can get out of that one for sure.
So if I was to play it, I couldn't just like come up with my raft, shoot you, take your raft, and drive away like in GTA.
No, I think for that sort of experience, you probably want to look at something more like Sea of Thieves, which is like a pirate simulator.
Yeah.
That one, everybody can have their own boat and go relentlessly screw with each other if that's what you're about.
That sounds like an interesting game.
Yeah,
is it on?
There's a lot of good
like PC game.
Yeah, Raft, I believe, is currently only available for PC because that's the platform that it started on. But I believe that's a Unity engine game. So theoretically, they should be able to port that to just about anything without too much effort. So I wouldn't be surprised if you end up seeing that on other platforms here, especially now that it's officially released, as like a quote unquote finished product.
You got it on Steam?
Yeah. Yeah, Steam's where I initially discovered it and played it, but I'm sure it'll be proliferating out everywhere else, as time goes by. It seems like any game that becomes at all popular just inevitably ends up on pretty much every system in one form or another. I know, like on the Nintendo Switch, for example, there's already like a knockoff version of that game that people have been playing, which is apparently not nearly as good, but just sort of aesthetically similar. But I'm sure at some point the actual game will come there and everywhere else.
Sounds like it's a fun one.
Yeah, it's a good time if you like the sandbox survival thing, for sure. And I'd say even if you're not already a fan of that genre, the game mechanics and the gameplay are solid enough that I think it would be a good one to try out to see if you can be swayed. And the other nice thing is it's not a terribly expensive game. I think like normal price on it is like $20. So if you catch it on a sale, it's not a huge investment.
Is it just as fun if you were playing it by yourself, though?
It's definitely a different experience playing it by yourself, because obviously when you've got people helping you, you accomplish things a lot faster, right? If you're just responsible for doing everything, that's definitely going to be more time consuming and a bit more stressful, because you got multiple things happening simultaneously. Sometimes you kind of have to make choices about what you deal with or don't deal with, and then there are sort of consequences that unfold as a result of that. Whereas if you're playing with other people, you can kind of divide and conquer a lot of your way through a lot of things. So it's definitely, as with a lot of games, I feel like the dynamic is very different if you're doing that single player versus in a group. But I guess it's all just what you're after, what sort of experience you want to have. Speaking of experiences, I think there's one more thing that I'm really excited to talk about, and I hope you're as excited to talk about it as I am, because I thought it was super awesome. You want to tell the people what that is?
The movie Prey.
Yeah.
Part of the Predator franchise.
Yes. Sadly, exclusively on Hulu at the moment, which I know is probably going to make it a little harder for some people to watch. But I would argue, and I don't know if you'll back me up on this or not, but I would argue that movie might be good enough that if you needed to sign up for some Hulu for a month to watch it, it might be worth it.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was getting a lot of praise, but it was so different than what I thought it was going to be, and they did a great job. It's not really spoiling anything, but since we were talking about sort of westerns earlier with the books, it's such a western feel. I mean, it reminded me of some of the old classics with the sweeping landscapes and everything, and yeah,
Yeah, so without getting into spoiler territory, I think we can safely say, for anyone who's not already familiar with it, it's a period piece, right? It's set in, I believe, the late 1700s in the Midwest, sort of the what would have been the northern United States or southern Canada. Not exactly sure where the geography lines up with that, to be honest. But it basically follows a Comanche tribe and their sort of life and struggles in that time period, with the injection of an outside force that is meaning to do some harm and some chaos in their neighborhood. And that's one of the things I would say about that movie too, is like, obviously if you know about the Predator franchise and you know like the history of it and you kind of know what you think it's going to be about, that's all fine and well and good. But I would actually argue that you don't even have to have seen a Predator movie or any of that stuff to have any appreciation for this film, right? Like, I think to me, this is a movie that just could stand on its own. It's so good and just well executed that I like. Obviously, being familiar with all the things that are being referenced in it is great. Like, if you are a fan of the franchise, but I would recommend that movie to just about anyone who enjoys just really well made films. Like, I think there's a lot of really good stuff to say about that movie for sure.
And you can use it as a prequel. So you could see it if you haven't seen any of the others. You could see that. You get sort of this is sort of what happened in the early days, and then you can go on and follow the others.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that for sure. And because it is really different tonally too. Like, I think it really stands on its own very nicely. And definitely one thing I wanted to specifically mention about this one, because it's just something that I get excited about regarding it, is definitely one of my current favorite directors. Dan Trachtenberg directed this movie, and he's somebody who I've been following for quite some time now, like going way back into the day, from back when he was on like the Totally Rad show on Revision 3 with Alex Albrecht and Jeff Kanata and those guys doing like all the stuff they did around like reviewing comics and movies and books and stuff on that show back in the day. So it's just really cool to see his like career evolve the way it has, like going from doing pilots and like one-off episodes of TV shows. Like, he did an episode of Black Mirror that he directed. He directed the pilot for The Boys. He did 10 Cloverfield Lane, and just seeing him kind of evolve into like the fully fledged, like sort of badass, for lack of a better term, director that he has become has been really cool. I often have like that thought in the back of my head, like if I were to like have like a short list of people that I would love to see like direct something that I've written, like he would definitely be on my short list for sure. And that is only that thought has only like solidified as I've seen like the newer things that he's been doing. Like, I think he's on a really great trajectory creatively.
That's like, I'm taking it that you liked 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. Have you seen that?
Yep. Yeah. But I even like Cloverfield. So a lot of people, didn't like it that much, but I thought, getting back to found footage, I guess, because that's what that's known as. But 10 Cloverfields, same world, but a much different feel than what Cloverfield was. But they did a really,
and really good use of John Goodman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just him like being 100% him.
Yeah.
That's another one I would definitely recommend though if people haven't seen it. I think at this point that movie's pretty well known, but I know like especially when it first came out, it kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. But I feel like people have kind of come around on it and are a lot more aware of it now than they were when it first hit.
Yeah.
But I like the original Cloverfield also. I'm a fan of it too. So I was kind of eagerly anticipating it, especially knowing that Trachtenberg was involved in it, and I was not disappointed in that one either. But I would say for me, even being a big fan of all his previous work, I think like Prey is probably his best yet. I would say, like I think that's saying something because I like the stuff he had done previously too. So.
Well, that movie sets the bench pretty high. I mean, it's a pretty spectacular movie.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think it's easily hands down the best since the original. Like, and I would argue it could, in its own way, like stand toe to toe with the original for me. Obviously, a very different kind of movie, so it's really comparing like apples and oranges. But I mean, that I think it's as good as that first Predator movie is in my book. In its own way.
Less explosions.
Yeah, more mud. Less explosions, but still like. Well, okay, so here's the last thing that I'll say about it. Like, it's been a while since I've seen a movie where I immediately thought I would like to watch that again, and that movie, Prey, for me was a movie where I thought, that's a movie I'm going to end up owning because I'm going to want to watch that more than once to catch like all the little details and all the little intricacies of it. And I think like that is a movie that would stand up to like repeated viewing in the way that a lot of the classic films that we've talked about here do. That's my prediction anyway. We'll see if that holds up over time, but I'm gonna throw that out there and go out on that limb.
I should actually go downstairs and see how many Prey movies I have, or Predator movie. How many Prey movies? How many Predator movies I have?
Well, you have to have the original, right? I mean,
I definitely have
like
that
must.
one.
Yeah,
and I think I threw in a couple of the Alien versus Predator movies too.
Little Lance Hendrickson.
Yeah.
Well, fun fact: the original Predator, my first rated R movie, my first rated R theatrical experience when I was about 13. So 13 passing as 17. Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. It's a good franchise.
Yeah. Well, speaking of good times, I think you've survived. I think COVID has not claimed you, and we've actually reached the end of our adventure here.
But I apologize to everyone that thought that maybe I looked like I was dead throughout. Very limited moving. I was just focusing on sitting upright.
That's a good job. Way to hang in there. I'm sure the audience appreciates it. I certainly do. The jack-o'-lantern's psyched. He's super into it.
He's smiling.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with that.
There you go. So hopefully this is the worst of it for me and that I pass through, and it's just all uphill from now on.
I believe. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to let you get out of here so you can begin the road to recovery, but we will be back next time with another crazy episode, and hope you folks will join us with your post-Halloween candy hangovers. And we will see you next time.
Don't forget to watch Prey. It's a good movie.
Indeed. Congratulations. you just survived the post-mortem report. For more information about the show, the hosts, or the things they talked about, check out our super swanky information page at anchor.fm/postmortemreport. Until next time, always remember, good posts never die.